on behalf of everyone here at Find Center, we're delighted to welcome you to this free virtual class. Each class has been designed to offer you a respite from busyness, introduce different healing approaches, and help you grow into the best version of you. My name is Zainab Selby, and I am the Chief Awareness Officer at Find Center. Find Center is a platform that has been created to enable everyone to have free access to curated wisdom for their well-being. The site offers an amazing array of podcasts, videos, books, articles, courses, and more to help deepen our understanding and give us a higher perspective on the many emotional challenges that face us. We hope the site provides loving support for those who are seeking to heal from their pain and trauma, and those who are looking for inspiring resources to deepen their knowledge, strength, and connection with the joy of being alive. Thank you for joining us. We hope you enjoy the class, and we hope you find your experience at Find Center enjoyable and beneficial. Creating an account is free and allows you to customize your experience based on your interest.
Hey there and welcome. I'm Berschback and we are together today for Thriving Together, the Balanced and Resilient Family. This is a topic I maybe couldn't love more, and it's also a topic that has become so pertinent over the last couple of years. So I'm really excited to have this opportunity to share with you some of the practices and strategies and mindset shifts that you can make to start to shift your own experience around feeling balanced and cultivating resilience so that you don't have to just rely on your conditioned way of responding, but that you can choose the way you want to respond to everything that comes your way. So without further ado, we're going to get started. I will go ahead and share my screen here. So when we think about the family thriving together, it's so interesting. It's a super windy, blustery day here. And, sometimes family life is like that, right? It's a lot going on, so many moving parts, lots of sounds happening, and it can be a lot to take in. And yet, just like, at points when the wind will die down, family life can be like that too. There can be those quiet moments, those stretches of time, between a sports season or over the summer where things quiet. And what I really want you to be able to have after our time together today is to get to choose how to show up in any of those circumstances. It often feels like we have to just rely on, like whatever comes to us in the moment as our way to react. But there's so much more available. And I'm so excited both to share strategies for you and your children here today. So let's go ahead and get started. As I said, my name is Berschback. And my slides are not wanting to advance, so 1 second here. There we go. Just a little bit about me. I'm the co-founder of Total Potential along with my brother Jake. So yes, we are families supporting families, doing all kinds of integrated and mindful and body-centered work. We also wrote a book by the same name, Total Potential. I am an unbeatable mind coach, as is Jake. I'm also a registered dietitian, a yoga instructor, and for sure the most important thing you need to know about me is that I am a mom of 3 magical children and married to my husband, John, who is just a terrific man, and my world begins and ends with them. So this family space is so near and dear to my heart. I really can't even describe how important it is for me to support families in that integration and loving and connected relationship. So 3 things I want you to be able to take away from today. First of all, I want you to be able to have strategies and ways and practices for you to start the day on your terms. We're going to dive into how that looks sometimes. Even if it's just one strategy for you or one strategy for your child, one way that you can start the day in a way that feels good to you. I also want you to be able to really start to identify the areas where you feel like energy is draining and areas where you feel like you can build energy and start to create an opportunity where those things are coming in balance. Not that we want to always feel like we're just like overflowing with energy. I mean, that sounds amazing, but more often it's going to be how do we get these things to equalize? But then if we could add the icing on the cake of like, okay, I'm equal, but now I have a practice that just bumps me up a notch so that I can feel extra good in my body and in my system. We're going to talk about strategies to do that. Again, both for you and your child. And then finally, how do we actually start to train resilience, not only for ourselves, but as our family unit? I think it's safe to say that the past 2 years have really identified ways in which we maybe had skills for resilience, but also identified ways that resilience didn't show up, or maybe it lacked for one person in our family and was totally different for another person in our family. And so choosing, how do we start to train the skills of resilience so that we can just have it whenever we need it, rather than when life dumps something on us and we have to react? How can we opt into it with mindful and thoughtful and intentional strategies? So my intention for you is to come away with at least one strategy that goes in each one of these buckets. And if it's not for you, maybe for your child as well. So let's get rolling. When we think about showing up every day and wanting to grow even just 1%, 1% is a big deal. How do we start to make that happen? Now, if we think about how we train ourselves day to day, the most important way that we can start so that we feel balanced and we feel like we have energy to meet the day is to start with a morning routine. It is so true, and that's why I love this quote. When we try to become better at any one thing, if we try to start our day off on the right foot, connected to who we are and our most important work, it shifts the way the whole rest of the day feels. So if you think maybe you don't have a morning routine, guess what? You do, because every morning you wake up and you get out of bed. Maybe you go use the bathroom. Maybe it's the pitter patter of a toddler's feet. That is your morning alarm. Those are the aspects of your morning routine. It's just that for the vast majority of us, that time is completely unconscious. We do it in a very like hamster wheel kind of way, just in the way we've just sort of landed on a routine, not because we tried to do that, but because it just sort of unfolded that way. And activating on purpose, even one aspect of a morning routine, is a huge way to start to shift into what you want to experience. And it literally starts to change the whole rest of the day and the way that you get to show up. So what are some of the ways that you would like to potentially start the day? Throughout our time together today, we're going to be talking about aspects of the body, the mind, and the spirit. We often like to separate these things, treat them as if they're completely their own entity. But the fact of the matter is that you cannot take your brain out of your body. Things would be real weird. And you cannot flip that. You can't remove your body's access to your brain. So everything we're going to talk about today is going to tap into these three aspects, and how do we use those to our advantage, again, to create what we want to experience. So in your morning routine, you can use those three aspects to start to create balance and automatically relieve stress before the day even gets started. So when we think about from the body perspective, while you're sleeping overnight, you're basically like slowly and steadily becoming a little bit more dehydrated. So one of the most important things we can do right away when we wake up is have a nice big glass of water. Even as you drink that water, it almost feels like you're like plugging into an outlet, like, oh, I've lit up my system. I'm back online. So something as simple as a glass of water, beautiful way to start the day. How else might you activate your body system so that you can start to recognize what it is you're waking up with every day? If you wake up with aches and pains, okay, how might you move your body so that it's a little bit more flexible, or stretch, or get a little bit of light yoga in, so that your body can start to come into its full self, to feel limber and open and ready to take on the day? Maybe that's the time of the day when you walk your dog. There's a million ways to start to activate the body system, but these are two incredibly simple ways: nice light movement and a big glass of water. Then if we shift into the mind, how do we start to clarify what's happening in the mind? I don't know about you, but for the vast majority of us, we wake up and the wheels start spinning. And sometimes we don't even realize how they started spinning or how they started spinning on that specific topic. There are a lot of really powerful ways to shift out of that spin mode and into something much more calm and centered and focused. These are a couple of the strategies to start. Something as simple as gratitude, and you can stack these things, right? You could be drinking your glass of water and thinking about being thankful for a clean glass of water. That is such a simple practice, but it immediately starts to train the mind on looking for positive, not just in this one moment, but start training the mind to look for positive around at all times. Gratitude. It can go beyond that. I'm thankful for my family. I'm thankful for a warm house. Like whatever the simple things in life are that you are thankful for in that moment, acknowledging those either out loud in words, in a written journal, just in your mind's eye, whatever works for you. But it's a really powerful way to start to train the mind to find the good. It's also really important to start to quiet the mind. So this is where like a mindfulness practice, a meditation practice, a breath practice, a journaling practice, these are all ways where we can start to notice what the mind is thinking. Awareness is a superpower. I could say that 1,000 times, and we're going to talk about it more later. But until we even realize what we're thinking about, it's very hard to change our thoughts. So how might you start to quiet the system, quiet the thoughts so that you can even recognize what is happening in the brain mind? We'll talk more about that. But something as simple as sitting down, taking, 5, 10 nice deep breaths, that's a beautiful way to start to just realize what the mind is thinking about. Now, if we think about in that spirit box, that spirit bucket, how we can start to choose how we start the day, that's where we can connect to what is deeper for us. Is it something like connecting to a higher power or a religion or a faith tradition, if that's important to you? That's a way you might connect to that spirit aspect. What about connecting to your most important work or who you're going to show up and serve that day? That is incredible to start to put in the mind and focus and laser your energy and attention toward that. It could be something as simple as identifying in our coaching work, we call this the 3 Ps, the things that you're passionate about. What are your principles or values? And then what is your purpose? That's big work, but doing that work and getting clear on it and connecting to it every single day, again, it sets you up for success because you then know where your targets are. You know where you're going to focus your energy. And it makes like that chaotic nature of family life, and trust me, I get it. It can feel like that. It slows the whole process down. And then as we identify where are we really going to show up and meet the mission of our life and who we are as a person and how we can uniquely serve, then we can prioritize. Great. Okay, so I might have this big sweeping project in front of me and it's really meaningful and purposeful to me. What are the aspects of that I'm actually going to do today? Keep it super simple. I usually, for that prioritize aspect, maybe 3, maybe up to 5 things that are your top priorities for the day, because the day is still going to unfold and it's still going to happen and you're still going to have to manage the surprises that show up. But how might you start to prioritize your most important tasks so that you can be very directional with your energy? Again, throughout our time together today, we're going to really focus on identifying where am I losing energy? Where is it just sort of like bleeding out and it's not even because I decided to spend energy there. It's just sort of like leaking from my system. Prioritizing tasks and your most important tasks is a way to like almost collect that energy back to you and be really intentional with how you're going to use it. So as I describe these different aspects, start to think, what is the one thing that would help you start your day on better terms in a way that feels good to you, true to you, and like even in your mind's eye, you can see would help you start the day feeling more balanced, feeling more ready to take on the day. And jot that down right now. And as we go through these, please, if you have any questions, comments, please feel free to put them in the chat or in the Q&A, because I'm more than happy to answer. This is not easy work, but it's like life-changing work. So that's a morning routine. Then we think about how might we consider some of these aspects of a morning routine with our children. Oh my gosh, like I can't even imagine, right? You get the kids like racing up in the morning, you gotta eat breakfast, who has their socks? Like it can feel explosive very quickly. And yet, is that what if we don't wanna start our day like that, why do we wanna start our kids' day like that? We don't. So how do we start to be really intentional with how we interact with our children in the morning? This first one here, these kind first words. Oh my gosh, I cannot say enough about just choosing our words carefully so that our children wake up to not some negative loop that we're feeding them, but to something that feeds them and like lifts them up and makes them feel good and confident. It might be something as simple as, hey, good morning. It's wonderful to see you today, right? If that's the first thing they've heard, oh my gosh, what a gift we can give to our children. And it's so simple. There's lots of ways we can fill up their bucket. Something I think with little kids, touch is something that's often like very part of just taking care of little kids, but it's something that we often start to let go as kids get older. And that physical touch just cannot be underestimated for its boost in connectivity. The way it even a short, hug or hand on the back, the endorphins and the neurochemicals that start to flow from that physical connection, both for us as a parent and also our children. Oh my gosh, like that's a power move right there. A nice hug, embrace, a pat on the back, holding their hands. Really simple, but activating physical touch. Something as simple as smiling, right? Like let your child see you be happy to see them. Right? Let them see the twinkle in your eyes, or if it's not going to come through words, let it still be expressed. Of course, nourishing them with good food. I get it. The mornings are wild and crazy sometimes. There's a lot going on. If you have a large family, there can really be a lot going on. But how might you have, even if it's just as simple as, a whole piece of fruit or washed and clean fruit that gets to sit on the counter? How might you use food to start to nourish and fill your kids up? If we're going to use gratitude, why not use gratitude with our children, right? Share the thing you're thankful for today, or ask them right out of the gate, hey, you woke up this morning, I'm so glad to see you. What are you thankful for today? And start training that loop in them. You guys, this is just the way our brain becomes wired. And if we have that as our system, our wiring is to look for the good, it makes resilience so much easier because our brain is trained. Our brain is wired for finding the good. So I cannot underestimate the power of using gratitude both for yourself and with your children. The other thing that I think can easily get bypassed is like, how do we start to move our bodies right out of the gate for our children? If you have young toddlers, that's probably pretty easy. They're probably like up and at 'em and going. How might you embrace that with them? Is there music playing in the kitchen and there's dancing, or, something really simple so that the whole family can kind of start to get moving? But if it's not going to be a movement practice, how might you check in so that your child starts to recognize how their body system is feeling? Our children are amazing. They have not yet cut off the information that their bodies send to their brain, like we often have as adults. And so they usually can very easily access the information of their bodies. So it might be something as simple as like, hey, how is your body feeling today? Maybe they don't have language for it. Do you feel open? Do you feel flexible? Do you feel strong? Right? Like starting to give some language and context if the words don't yet arise for them. How does your heart feel today? How do your hands feel today? How's your mind feeling today? Like really starting to get curious with them, not to assign them how they're feeling, but to activate that curiosity process of the mind checking in with the body. So these are all wild power moves, like flex your muscles. These are amazing ways for us to connect with our kids and start their day off right. Again, so that resilience is less of a thought. It's just there because they're looking for the good. They've started the day on their terms. Like starting the day on a whole different level. Okay, so if we start our day with a morning routine, we've walked into the day on our own terms, which is massive. Like that will change the course of your life if you only did that one thing. However, there are other things that we can do to help balance energy as life comes at us throughout the day. Now, our energy levels are affected by so many things. We're going to tap into several buckets of these things. But the fact of the matter is that as our energy levels rise, the body becomes easier and more efficient. As the body becomes more efficient, our mind becomes more efficient. And we can start to collaborate these things to really be forward and directional with how we move. So to say that you can start to utilize that amplification of energy to really produce outstanding results is an understatement, but I do love Tony Robbins for saying it. Now, before we dive into these buckets that are obvious ways where we can build energy, I think it's really important to just get clear that in our culture, it is wildly common to use things that are actually punishments for us as rewards. Something like after a long day and sitting down to a bottle of wine. That is not a reward. You might as well punch yourself in the face. That is a punishment. Now, is sitting down enjoying a glass of wine in the company of someone you care, maybe that is a reward. But staying up till midnight to binge watch Netflix, also not a reward. Our system is just continuing to drain by so many of the things we use as rewards that are actually punishments. And so I'm not highlighting this so that you are feeling like you judge yourself. I'm just highlighting this because it's incredibly common. We all do it, me included. But how can we start to shift what we seek as a way to build our energy back up and a way to reward ourselves that actually boosts us up instead of actually continuing to drain us? So it's really important to start to get clear about how we use rewards, and do they actually support us, or are they actually making things harder for us? Now, when we think of energy maintenance and starting to fill our cup, I mean, this Judy Buchanan is an energy worker that I just absolutely love. And she talks all the time about how you cannot give from an empty cup. And for all of the parents here now or listening to this later, you know exactly what I'm talking about, that you cannot give of that very last drop. There's nothing left. So how do we start to use our system and the way we fuel and recover our system to actually have energy built up in such a way where we're giving from what's left, like the overflow, not from the very last drop? It's a huge mind shift, but it's a really necessary one, especially because then we get to show up in the way we want to, not just, like dragging ourselves to the, absolute limit. Now, each of these buckets, honestly, could be an entire class or a series of classes by themselves. So we will not be able to get in quite as deep detail as absolutely could be done, but just to start to identify where are the places that you could use these different aspects to start to fill your cup and start to fill that energy bank so that you're giving from the overflow. Diet and nutrition. This is a perfect example. This is also a perfect example of where we use punishments instead of rewards. We sitting down to like a celebratory meal, that might feel like a reward. Coming home and eating a bag of Doritos, that's not a reward. That's a punishment. So how can we start to use our diet to fuel us in a way where we are just like the energy is just building and building and building. That's fresh fruits and vegetables. That's, whole foods, making sure we're hydrated. Oh my goodness, such a huge aspect of the body system feeling like it has energy. Hydration, huge, huge, huge. Getting serious about how we use alcohol, when, where, how much. What supplements do we use? Are there supplements that would benefit us? Do we think about our gut health? Like, there are so many aspects that we can think of in the food and nutrition space that fill us up. But even if it's just that you're going to drink one more glass of water moving forward per day, that's a win. So what is the one thing, if you in your mind's eye can think about your diet and nutrition right now, what's the one change that for your system would fill you up? And there you go. Our brains are so amazing. I'm sure you came up with one thing, and now you get to tuck that in your pocket and use it moving forward. What about our movement? This is an interesting one where we often treat exercise as if it's a punishment because we are not yet as in love with our bodies as we probably could and should be. But movement, oh my gosh, training, pursuing health. I mean, there's so many ways to think about movement as exciting and just wrap your hands around it and go get it. And a little bit of that like competitive spirit. But we can use that to build up our system. If it doesn't feel great to for you to go for a 5-mile run, maybe that's not what you need to do. Maybe to feel yourself fill up, you need yoga or Tai Chi, or you need stretching, or you need to go for a walk. Like, it doesn't have to be a gut-wrenching workout to fill your system. However, if that's what fills you up, then go do a gut-wrenching workout and enjoy that and feel the energy that flows from that for hours afterward, right? So how do we get serious about how we want to move our bodies so that we can have even more energy to give? Sleep, oh my goodness, we live in a culture where being busy and like, oh, I only slept for 5 hours last night almost gets us some kind of imaginary award. If I could eliminate that from our culture, I would instantaneously. Our bodies need 7 to 8 hours of sleep every single night. Now, if you have young children, I get it. You're not as in control of that as you might want to be. So where do you get more? Where are the times when, if it's, one person's night to get up with the child and then you're sleeping maybe a solid 8 hours during that time instead? I get that it's not always a walk in the park to get that volume of time, but for the vast majority of us, what that means is I need to turn off the TV, or I need to get off of social media, or I need to make sure I set my alarm so that I'm waking up at the same time every day so that it's easy enough for me to fall asleep every night. Maybe my room needs to be darker. There's so many ways that we can optimize our sleep environment and the quality and quantity of our sleep that changes completely the way we show up. Just on a personal note, like, of these factors, that one for me is the tipping point. And I think it would, for all of us, be helpful to identify which one of these for you is the thing that leads to everything else. For me, if I don't get 7 to 8 hours of sleep, I don't manage stress well. My body doesn't want to move well. I will look for chocolate in the cabinet. Like, there's that sleep for me is what hinges everything else. So if you can identify one of those for you, that's a major win, because then you can laser focus on that thing and create more energy and more balance. Okay, nature. Oh my gosh, nature is like a battery charger. Even if it's going outside and walking barefoot for 2 minutes, like, that is almost like an automatic energy battery charger. If you have more time to immerse yourself in nature, if that's a walk in the woods, a walk along a beach, going to a body of water, like, those are ways that really recharge our system. I happen to live in a very cold weather climate, so I'm acutely aware that for people in big cities or cold weather places, that nature isn't always right at our fingertips. Maybe that means you put a plant next to the kitchen sink, or maybe you make sure that if you have a pet, you're interacting with them. There are lots of ways to access nature without necessarily going for a hike. So how can you use that to, again, charge the system and start to build energy? stress management is a massive one. There are so many powerful tools we can use to manage stress, and we're going to talk about this in a second when we talk more specifically about resilience. But until we learn what stress triggers we have, the only option before that is to relieve stress. So maybe that means like a long, deep breath practice. When you activate the parasympathetic nervous system, the whole body-mind system starts to downregulate by taking those nice big breaths. We massage the vagus nerve that runs all the way from our brain to our gut. That alone can be a huge way to just release and relieve stress. Now, interestingly, the first four things we talked about, diet, nutrition, sleep, and nature, are also massive ways for us to relieve stress. If you have valuable social connections, that can be ways to relieve stress. It's also important for us to change our relationship to stress. Not all stress is bad. If you feel a little bit of pressure to do an important task at work, instead of relating to that as negative, you can start to shift your mind around that as excited, as driven, as passionate, right? So we can start to shift how we internalize that stress as well. So those are all things we can do before we recognize what it is that's stressing us. Now, once we build awareness around what the thing is that pressed our buttons, now there's a whole bunch of other tools, and I'd be more than happy to share specific ones if anyone's interested. But that is a major, that's a power move to start to identify what it is that presses your buttons, how you become stressed, in what environments, with who, over what tasks. That's all massive work that can incredibly shift where and how we use our energy. And then that social connection. In the context of our time together today, thinking about social connections related to our families, these are built-in connections that we are living with. That does not necessarily mean that they are life-giving every moment, right? You might have a toddler who's going through a real fun stage, right? And so you might need all of the other aspects of energy maintenance so that you have the energy to meet that toddler in a real fun stage. However, there are also ways to use those social connections that feed us, that just overflow. They fill our system. Is that date night with your husband or wife? Is that making sure you meet for lunch with a really important friend or extended family member? Really getting clear about how you can use social interactions to build up your energy rather than the flip, which it's also super important to get clear about, where does your energy bleed out in social interactions? Do you have a group of friends that it's actually pretty uncomfortable for you to be around, and being around them feels when you leave you need a nap? Maybe it's time to get real about, reducing the frequency or intensity of those type of interactions. Maybe there's a boss at work that you can't get away from, but it sends your system into overdrive every time they email you or stop by your office or, hop on a Zoom call with you. Okay, well, it's really important to get clear about creating distance between the factors that push your buttons about that boss and what you want to do over here. So again, each one of these could easily be its own lecture, its own class, its own series of classes, but probably instantaneously you identified one of these that you could start to make a change in that would feel really good to you and feel like an energy fill rather than an energy drain. So tuck that thing in your pocket, and how do you want to use it? That's the action step moving forward. There's no day like today to get started. Okay, what does energy maintenance look like with our children? Well, it often seems like our children are overflowing with energy. However, in this context, we're thinking about balancing the energy as a whole. How do we stay active together? Something like family play, playing tag at the park. I always laugh, my husband and I are usually playing with our kids at the park, and all the other kids come to join us. Our kids are looking for that type of interaction. How do we opt into playing with them? Opt into going swimming when they go in the swimming pool. Opt into jumping on the trampoline or, riding the scooter around the driveway. All of those things not only are great for us because, again, we're tapping into that movement, but create more bonds between us as family members. In the food and nutrition space, I cannot say enough about family meals and getting kids in the kitchen. These are incredible ways to bond over food, to explore food without necessarily having to try it or eat it. These are ways that our children are nourished with food without specifically ingesting the food. So really powerful. Our kids also need sleep routines. We want them to just fall asleep on their own, but we don't do that either. Why would we expect that of our children? So how can we create a meaningful, relaxing routine that starts to tell their system, hey, it's time to relax and go to sleep? Might be something as simple as, hey, we're going to brush teeth and read a story, lights out. I mean, it doesn't have to be complicated, but how can we start to create a routine where it's not just you fell over and fell asleep because you were so dog tired at the end of the day? Our kids are so awesome at exploring nature, and encouraging them to do that is incredibly powerful. Doing that together is incredibly powerful. I can't say enough about that. Something that our kids don't have enough of, in my opinion, these days is downtime. Our kids go to school, then race to an activity. If you have more than one child, it's the parenting Olympics, trying to get everyone to all the things that they need to go to. There's no built-in downtime. We fill every moment of their time. And how are they ever going to downregulate? How will they ever know how to relax? How to integrate in their body? How to explore things that are just exciting to them if they never are alone or never have downtime? It's literally impossible. So building in downtime, even if it's one night a week, is a chill time for the family. Or maybe Sunday afternoons are a chill time for the family. But finding those opportunities where our children can downregulate, incredibly important. In that social space, there's a lot of opportunity to support our children with encouraging the nurturing interactions that they have. If they have a group of friends that they come home from feeling terrible about every day, okay, how do we put them in contact with a grandparent that they love and adore, or an uncle, or a neighbor, or a family friend, or a group of friends outside of school that maybe they don't get a chance to interact with them as much? How can we support those really fill you up kind of social interactions so that they can fill their bucket and not only have social interactions that drain and pull their energy? And again, back to that physical touch, I cannot say enough about the handshakes, the high fives, the hugs, the pat on the back, just teeny tiny little ways that we can come in physical contact with our children, and the way it really fills both of us up, especially in the physical and relational buckets. Okay, so that's energy balance. And that's incredibly important. We need energy to be able to access resilience. But how can we start to train resilience? Well, this is where it gets really interesting, right? We often treat resilience as the thing that we just show up with, that it's almost innate, whether you have it or not. And if you've never trained it, that's true. It will just be whatever shows up. However, these strategies we're going to share from here on out are ways we can start to train resilience, again, from a body, mind, and spirit aspect, with intention, so that when hard things come our way, we already have skills and ways of being and ways of showing up that support us feeling good as we step into a challenge. So, superpower number one related to resilience is awareness. Now, that might be something as simple as body awareness. When I feel challenged, what do I notice in my body? Where do I notice that? Does my heart start to race? Does my chest feel tight? Does my whole like system shake? Do I turn red? Like, do I start to sweat? How does my body react when I feel either afraid or challenged? This is massive information we can use, because the more acute we can start to recognize what's happening in the body, the more quickly we can take action, right? A lot of times what happens is that something that feels challenging or hard will meet us, and then a week later we'll be like, oh, my body has felt so drained. I just like cannot get enough sleep. I feel like I want to eat everything in the cupboard. And all this time has passed between when we actually were confronted with that challenge or fear and noticing that it has happened and that we're experiencing it physically. Now, as we gain awareness in our body system, that distance starts to shorten and shorten and shorten. So instead of it taking a week, the next time you feel that sensation or the way that stress is showing up in your body, maybe now it's only 2 days. And then maybe it's only a couple hours. And then it's almost instantaneous. Like, whoa, what did that person just say that made me feel like I have to, that's something I have to like fight against, right? You'll start to recognize it in shorter and shorter amounts of time. So body awareness, huge tool. Our mind awareness is a huge, huge aspect that we have to start to get control over to be able to be resilient. Our mind is wired for negativity, and we're going to talk about this a little bit more in a second. If we do not catch the thoughts, if we do not notice the thoughts that we are thinking, the mind will absolutely spin out of control around every fear and challenge. Period. It's the way our brains are wired. There's no judgment against it. It's just how we were created. And from like an evolutionary standpoint, the way that our species has survived by recognizing the things we don't want to experience and move away from, instead of recognizing the things that we want to move toward, the positive things. So getting clear about what the mind is thinking is incredibly important, so that we can change it. And we'll talk about that in the next step. In the spirit aspect, Angela Duckworth is like the great guru. And she has identified 2 aspects that are incredibly important related to grit, which in my mind is an equal word to resilience. And they are passion and perseverance. Now, in the realm of spirit, if you have never identified the things you're passionate about, how are you going to decide when you want to activate resilience? When it's worthy of your attention, worthy of your energy to pursue that thing? There's no way to do it. It's just happening haphazardly. In the perseverance aspect, how would you ever decide to spend tons of time and energy pursuing something if it had no meaning to you, like deep, purposeful meaning to you? And so this is incredibly deep work, but until we bring these things up into our conscious awareness, we could be incredibly resilient toward things that don't matter. Maybe you have shown up and challenged over your kids' playing time on a sports team. Like, is that actually where your time and energy is incredibly useful and you should activate resilience? Maybe. There are situations where that would totally be true. But when we choose, because we are consciously aware of these most important things to us, to our lives, to who and how we want to serve, that really shifts how we get to show up and how we get to use our energy for meaningful ways. Now, how do we start to create awareness? Well, that's tricky, because the fact of the matter is that we're walking around operating out of our subconscious mind almost like 90% of the time, meaning that 90% of the time you're acting and behaving and feeling emotions and thoughts from the part of your mind that was developed before the second grade. So again, there is no judgment. It is just how we are created as humans. But it is absolutely essential that we start to create more awareness around our body mind, our brain mind, and our higher level being mind, spirit mind. Well, one no fail strategy to address all of those is breath. I'm going to invite everyone to just take a moment and close your eyes. Take a deep breath in, letting your belly be soft, expanding through the rib cage. And then as you exhale, letting the belly pull in, all of the torso returning to center. And you have one deep breath. Now, if you did that for several breaths in a row, almost instantaneously, it would become obvious to you the sensations that you're feeling in your body, the thoughts that are floating through your mind. And in the case of really identifying, is this a place where I want to spend my energy that matters to me deeply? Your body will give you an answer. Breath practice, mindfulness practices, these are ways that we can align our body, mind, spirit system in one quick, very effective practice. So even if it just means that you're going to take a 5-second inhale and a 5-second exhale, but it allows you to be present in your body, notice your thoughts, connect to your heart center and what's true for you, massive win. So resilient strategy number 1 is to become aware of your system, your thoughts, and what is really meaningful for you to pursue with resilience, with perseverance, and with some grit. Okay, how do we do this with our children? Super simple practices, right? We can start to share language in our family about how our bodies feel. This will almost automatically train a child's mind to scan their body system to notice how they're feeling. Super simple. Wow, my body feels really anxious today. Wow, my body feels really just open and like I could almost dance. It feels light today, right? It's incredibly simple, but starting to share that language. If you take a deep breath and do it audibly, or close your eyes and take a deep breath, your child's either going to notice what you did, they might follow along, or they're going to ask you what you're doing. All of which are massive opportunities for them to learn how to do the same. So let them hear and see you taking deep breaths, calming your system, being that model and leading by example. When it comes to awareness, both with ourselves and with our children, curiosity becomes a superpower. It is the way that we allow judgment to rest and just be open to what might actually be true. To set down all assumptions, to set down all that huge checklist of things that are supposed to be, and just notice what is. So asking simple questions. Oh, that's interesting. How do you feel about that? What did you think about it? How would you like that to be different? These are all incredibly simple questions, but it starts to create awareness for our children of what they are experiencing in their internal environment. When it comes to purpose, as I mentioned, our children are way overscheduled as a general rule of thumb. And we often just bypass how they feel about the things that they're doing. And just like we feel like we have to show up and check all the boxes of the things we're supposed to do, we are creating that for our children as well by having this massive list of activities and schoolwork and social engagements that they have to participate in. And then they really don't have a say about whether or not they continue. Do they like it? What's working? What's not? So starting to inquire of them. Hey, you've been taking piano for 6 months now. What do you think of it? What parts do you like? What parts would you do differently? Is this something that you enjoy in your free time, or is it just that you feel like you have to go to the lesson? like really starting to get curious so that they can start to identify those things they're passionate about and the things that are worthy of their time and attention from their internal self. If you were a star basketball player, who cares if your kid is a star basketball player? It's not even interesting. If you were a star basketball player but your kid is like an amazing trumpet player, God bless America. Like, that is such a beautiful thing for them to experience and cultivate their own joy and their own passion and their own way of persevering and pursuing. So starting to kind of shift that narrative of what our kids have to pursue versus what they get to pursue. It's a huge opportunity. Okay, resilience strategy number 2 is to flip negative and fear-based thinking into positivity. Now, in our body mind, I will argue that the best place to start is to start to have positive language about your body. We absolutely beat ourselves up, and it's not useful to us at all. It just fuels a fire that we don't even want to be sitting around. We can start to use better language. I feel strong. I feel open. I feel like I'm progressing. There's so many ways we can start to talk to our bodies that are so much more useful than beating ourselves up with negative patterns and loops. Now, as we talked about in the awareness strategy, positivity is absolutely critical for us to activate in our minds. Our brains are wired for negativity, and we need about 5 times the positive input to counteract every one negative thought. Now, we have like 50 to 60,000 thoughts a day, and most of them are the same thoughts as the day before, and many of them are not true. So if, let's say, we'll use small numbers, let's say 10,000 of them are negative. That's not even like a large percentage as a whole, but we need 50,000 of them to counteract the 10,000. So this is a huge amount of work, and this isn't so that we get to like sparkles and sunshine and rainbows. This is to get to neutral. So we have to start to identify where our thoughts go to fear and negativity and start to flip them into something that's way more powerful and useful for us. In the spirit realm, how do we connect to those things that matter most to us as almost like a pull? And this is positive because it is activating the deepest part of who we are and how we can serve. So if we can start to identify those things that really matter to the core of us, the most important things that we can do with our lives, and I get it, this is really deep and hard work, but there are lots of ways to pursue this, then it's almost like a vacuum. You don't even have to choose to activate the positivity. It is just pulling you to it. So getting clear on those things that you're passionate about, where your purpose is, how you can serve in powerful ways, that spirit realm, that's a huge way to pull you right to positivity. And the amazing thing about positivity is it starts to eliminate fear. Just like we talked about earlier, activating the wiring in our brain to get on a helpful loop. When we flip negativity into positive thinking and thoughts, and therefore emotions, it's training our brain to get off of the old loop and onto a new loop. It will take time, but as we start to eliminate fear, we activate courage. And courage is what allows us to take powerful action. So if you've ever felt like stagnant, like you're not sure of what your next right step is, start running that positive loop, the thing that makes you feel good and powerful and is true about you, and it will help you start to take action. So that's a huge opportunity for resilience, to just step into the thing that feels hard, but you know is true for you, but using that positivity loop to get there. With our kids, I cannot say enough about shifting the language we use around food and our bodies. We don't use a lot of great language about healthy foods, good foods, foods as rewards, and we don't use a lot of kind language about our own bodies or about other people's bodies. And it's like, just like our parents told us, if you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all. There's a massive opportunity for us to shift our language around things being pretty or good into something that's way more useful. Strong. How does it feel? What does it feel like to do that with your body? What does it feel like when you eat that? Like, I mean, there's so many opportunities around the language we use that could flip out of negativity and into positivity around our bodies and the foods that we eat. When our kids say something that is negative about themselves, we can help them flip the script. I'll give you a super easy example. When my daughter comes up to me and says, "Oh, I'm never good at that," it is something as easy as, "Oh, interesting, you're learning something new." Because that's true. But it gives her brain a new way of thinking about it. So where are the loops that your kids say out loud that you can start to help them replace with something that's more useful? Anytime your child is making effort or really stays at it when they're problem solving, feed that with positive language. Again, that's training their brain, that's training their whole system to pursue something with grit and resilience by using positive language and reinforcement. So hop on that bandwagon real hard. And gratitude. We've talked about this now a couple of times. Share what you're grateful for. Ask them what they're grateful for. How are they grateful for it? Why are they grateful for it? Like, just getting their brains to look and scan for positivity is just such an amazing opportunity and something that's so easy for us to share. Okay, we're coming to the tail end here. Strategy number 3 is to practice resilience. We often think that, like, okay, well, we'll be resilient when we get to that time when we need it. Not a guarantee. We have to train it and practice that, and we can do it together. In the body system, we can train, we can use our exercise to do hard things. If you don't know how to do a push-up, just learning how to do a push-up is practicing resilience from the aspect of the body. So many ways. Maybe you like to move heavy things. Maybe you could go out with the family, and I'm staring out our window here and we have a big wood pile outside. Well, guess what? That wood pile is going to need to come into the garage at some point before next winter. Okay, that's not going to be the most fun project, but we can do it. And when we do it together, it's super easy. Wouldn't that be something we would like our families to believe, that we can do hard things, we can do them together, and if we work together, the whole thing's easier. Like, if I could put a bow on this whole class, that would be it, right? So using the body to do challenging things is an incredible way to train resilience. When we train our mind with resilience, how might we teach our mind to flex, to learn something new, to entertain a new idea, to let go and examine where our biases are? That's not easy work, but we can do that. And as we do it, it trains our brain that we can do hard things. Awesome. Amazing ways to practice resilience. With our spirit aspect, I often think about practicing resilience as showing up. Who do you serve? Who do you want to serve? Who is it maybe uncomfortable to serve, but you could? How might you take time to make a meal for, the homeless shelter, or to go through your closets and make a donation of things that you no longer need? Those aren't comfortable things, but they're incredibly easy ways to practice doing something hard that serves someone else. So in that spirit bucket, tap into that. And we kind of touched on these. Try new and challenging things together. We recently, my son and I, learned how to do pull-ups. That's not super easy, but it was fun because we did it together, and now we believe something new about what our bodies are capable of. Massive opportunity. Learning something new together, or really encouraging an area of interest that your child has. Oh my goodness. Letting them explore that and their mind find new ways to keep after the thing that they really find joy in. That's like a parenting power move. And again, you can do work to support organizations, charities. Where's there some heavy lifting that you and your family can do and have the capacity to do, and then do that together. Really wonderful ways to start to train resilience. Okay, so if you're going to thrive together, balanced and resilient, We talked about starting the day you're away. What's the one thing you want to do for yourself or with your children? We talked about building energy and identifying where it bleeds off. What's the one thing you want to do for you or your children that we talked about today that help amp up the energy stores so that you can become resilient because you decided to, because you just decided to train it and train it together. Using that awareness as a power, absolute superpower, flipping negativity into positivity so that it's actually your brain and your system can actually be useful to you when things get hard. And then where do you get to start practicing resilience? Doing little hard but doable things together. It's an incredible way to support your children and yourself to grow resilience. So if you'd like to find out more, you can find us at thetotalpotential.com. We offer coaching. We have our book there. So many podcasts and blogs, not only from us, but from experts across many different fields. We would love to see you there. But now it will take a few minutes if there are any questions. And if there aren't any questions, I really hope you all have a marvelous day. Thank you so much for being here live to share this, and for everyone watching the recording. I hope you just have even 1, 2, 3 tiny little nuggets that help you opt in to the day, the life, the way that you want to experience and really connect to who you are as a person. Then for sure my work here is done. So I'm super grateful for the opportunity to support you in this class, Thriving Together, the Balanced and Resilience Family. And I just wish you all the very best. Thank you so much for your time. Take care.